Thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar today. We're very excited to speak with you about how to leverage specification data for faster LCAs and sustainability reporting. We are especially excited to announce our partnership with TRIAC and introduce you to the Compass tool and how SpecRite and TRIAC are working together. Today on the call, I'm joined by the founder, president, and CEO of TRIAC, as well as the founder and CEO of SpecRite, Prashant and Matthew. And you'll hear from both of them in a second, but first I want to give an introduction of both of them. We're lucky to have them each on the call. Prashant Jagtap founded TRIAC with the vision of bringing sustainability mainstream. For over 25 years, Prashant has worked with leading international brands and global manufacturers to help improve their product and package development and launch processes. As the president and CEO of TRIAC, Prashant routinely consults with leading companies to reduce their product and package environmental footprints. He's an expert in the sustainability arena and often conducts on-site workshops and webinars on the use of life cycle analysis and sustainability scoring to simulate, reduce, track, and report on environmental footprints. Prashant has a very impressive background, including holding a master's in manufacturing systems engineering from UMass at Amherst and an MBA from Xavier. Matthew Wright is the founder and CEO of SpecRite. Prior to founding SpecRite, he spent more than 25 years in the packaging industry, holding leadership positions at International Paper, Temple Inland, and WritePack, a custom packaging company that he co-founded. He sits on the packaging advisory board at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and is active in leading M&A deals in the packaging industry. Having personally worked with Matthew for the last 6 years, I know that sustainability is near and dear to his heart and has been on the vision and roadmap for SpecRite for a long time. So we're very excited about this webinar today. My name is Adam Armstrong. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at SpecRite. I've been at SpecRite for over 6 years, holding positions on our sales team, leading our customer success team, overseeing implementations, training, and support, and currently working on partnerships with many of you, as well as others in the industry, including universities and reseller channel partnerships. So a quick agenda, and then we'll get into it. Today, we're going to talk about the common sustainability challenges that many of you are talking about on a daily basis and that your companies are facing. We're going to talk about the importance of life cycle assessments and what exactly is an LCA. We'll talk about how SpecRite views the importance of a spec-first approach to sustainability. Then we'll get into the SpecRite and TRIAC partnership and why we've decided to work together. And finally, we'll get into a live demo that is probably what most of you are most excited about seeing, and we'll wrap up with questions at the end. So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Matthew to talk about the core challenges facing sustainability initiatives today.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Adam. And super excited to be here with Prashant and the TRIAC partnership that we've launched here. And I think today is going to be very exciting in understanding the value and how this truly does move the sustainability energy forward. You know, one thing stepping back that I've always said, as you've mentioned for over 6 years, is you really cannot be sustainable if you can't measure what you have today. And measuring what you have today is really all about data, and data are orchestrated and organized in something like a specification management system. And if you go back over time, I think the real challenges have been this lack of this data, both for product and packaging. You know, I think most companies will say they just don't know where that data is, can't put their fingertips on it easily. And if so, it's in multiple different spots. We know that constant collaboration with the complexity of the supply chains, collaborating with suppliers, co-mans, and partners, really been a challenge because, again, as this data is so fragmented and so many different places, it's hard to get a clear picture. And then on the backdrop of that, which is exciting for me and something we think we're all excited about, is there's more and more awareness about sustainability and really companies and products footprint. We're seeing things like EPR and CSR and other initiatives really taking this to a very next level or higher expectation for companies. And I think all of that is going to be based upon having the right data at the DNA level, which we'll talk about, to empower really cool tools like Compass that will help us move again sustainability forward. Prashant, I'd love to get your quick opinion on what I just shared and the challenges of data.
Thank you, Matthew. And this is Prashant, and I am also very excited about the partnership that we have with SpecRite. Over the last decade, as we have been working with companies on sustainability, one of the common challenges that we have faced all along is data. Where is the data? Where is the data for products or packaging? And so, today with the SpecRite partnership, that makes it a lot easier for us to do sustainability, because now the specs are easily accessible in one place. It's a single source of truth. And so when we create analysis and decisions on sustainability all along to reporting, it's all based on real, correct data.
I appreciate that, Prashant. I think it'd be great if you could take us through what an LCA is, even though the audience probably has great understanding of that. I think you, being the expert on the call, can really click through and help people better understand what it is first before we get into what the opportunities of us two working together. So love to hear and turn it over to you, Prashant.
That's great. So life cycle assessment, or LCA, has actually been around for 30, 40 years. And it is a methodology by which a complete environmental footprint can be calculated for any package or product. And there is an actual ISO standard or a series of standards that are used to perform this analysis. And in this case with Compass, we take the approach of doing a cradle to grave approach, which is the complete footprint of any kind of package. So that starts really in this example here for paper, all the way from growing trees, cutting them down, pulping them, making paper, making packages out of that, transporting them all the way to disposal. So this whole complete footprint is calculated using LCA. So now, why would anyone really want to do LCA, and how does it really benefit any engineer or any designer? So the whole idea about LCA, as I mentioned before, is getting the complete footprint. And once you have the complete environmental footprint, you can then decide what you can do to improve it. So for example, there are various things that can be done. So from a procurement point of view, you can figure out how much material you need. Can you reduce the amount of material? Can you add recycled content instead of virgin material? From a manufacturing point of view, you can look at energy reductions or renewable energies. You can also do waste reductions from a manufacturing point of view. On the distribution side, you can also look at how efficiently you are shipping your products. So for example, in your primary package, how much head space is there? And that's empty air, so how can you reduce that? Same thing with your secondary packaging, and the same thing with your pallets. So the whole idea about optimizing your pallet load can also be used to reduce your footprint. Now on the consumer side, at the end of, when a consumer buys the package and the product, at the end of it all, they have to, distribute it or reuse it, or maybe even recycle it. So all those things can be enabled by the designer, how to make it easy to recycle. And at the end of it all, when it goes to landfill, or when it goes to getting incinerated or getting recycled, those are also things that can be influenced on the front end of the design. So with Compass, we actually measure 8 different indicators. And over the last decade, we have found that these are pretty comprehensive in terms of figuring out the full impact. So fossil fuel use is one common indicator. Water use is another. Greenhouse gases, and that's the commonly called as carbon footprint. So we have 2 different versions of that. We have human impact and freshwater eutrophication and ecotoxicity. Now, this is pretty comprehensive. Most companies, most of our customers really end up using between 3 to 4 of these.
Thank you, Prashant. I think that's really educational. As I mentioned, probably a lot of people on the call have some knowledge what LCA is, but I find that oftentimes when they try to bring it to a larger audience, perhaps to their bosses, it becomes a little bit more difficult to explain. So this is great information for us to be sharing. We talk about, as Adam did, the SpecRite approach and the specification management approach, which is the spec comes first, the outcomes analytics come secondary. It really becomes important for companies to understand the data they need and to organize that data into what really technology expects from a data flow perspective to allow and enable things that you'll see in the demo. The cool part about it is that we've been on this journey long enough that SpecRite really has the templates and the know-how of the process to bring that data perhaps from 3, 4, 5, 6 different sources, perhaps from the vendors, some portion, different facilities, and bring that all into one place so we can have one record of the specification and be able to track the data that we know that we're consuming today, and therefore be able to track and make alterations and changes going forward. It also allows the process of an LCA not to be an event. I think most people that have run LCLs before know that it takes a while to pull that data together, to get the data structured correctly so that the outcome of the report can be very valuable. We also know as we go forward that this valuable data is going to be required very often, and it will no longer be an event anymore. So we have to have the specification management platform of data, open APIs, sharing these data flows with great tools like Compass to enable great outcomes. And so in that regard, I think the step first is the digitization of your data and really understanding how to do that to make great, powerful outcomes such as this. This is not built necessarily for sustainability, but this is certainly going to empower the sustainability efforts going forward. So with that, Adam, I'd like to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Prashant. Really appreciate all of that background, and I think it leads us into why did SpecRite and TRIAC decide to work together. And as somebody who's been in this space for 6.5 years now, I can definitely say that in the last, I'll say year to year and a half, the frequency of conversations that include sustainability discussion has just skyrocketed, and the amount of times that the desire for LCAs has been brought up has increased significantly. And so with our customers asking for an easier way to conduct LCAs for some time, and also our familiarity with TRIAC through the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, we decided to start talking. And when we first met with TRIAC, it was an obvious strong match. We both have a mutual passion for improving the packaging industry. There was a natural technical integration between the two software platforms that worked really nicely. And we also had a like-minded approach to solving customer problems. So everything lined up very well. And ultimately, there's a natural synergy in the data that's inherently captured in packaging and product specifications in SpecRite that fuels the life cycle assessment in Compass. And so it was pretty smooth from the get-go, and I think will make a lot of sense for enabling the outcomes that our customers and many of those of you on the webinar are looking for. So, Prashant, would love to get your thoughts on it as well.
Yes. So from our side too, I can echo almost all of the things that you said there, Adam. We also felt it was a partnership really made in heaven in some ways. Like I said, because so many of our customers, when we have been talking to them about doing sustainability, the data has always been sort of a common challenge throughout. The data has never been in one place. The data is dispersed in many different systems as well as across supply chains, and so that has been a bottleneck really for us to do sustainability. And so when we started talking with you guys, that just seemed like a perfect fit where we can both really help our customers achieve their sustainability goals.
Yeah, that's great comments, Prashant. I think for specification management and really pioneering the platform of how specifications are managed, what we look to is to partner with best of class solutions to make that data even more valuable. So we're certainly excited as we get a lot of energy and emphasis around sustainability to have a great best of class partner to make LCAs become a visual reality to our clients on a daily basis. So excited for this partnership and what's to come in the future.
Excellent. So with that, we are going to jump into a live demo of SpecRite and Compass together. Most of you have probably seen SpecRite before or use it yourselves. So we're not going to go into a lot of depth, but right now we're on a sample finished product page. You can see that we're on the finished goods tab, and you have your basic information on the finished good, such as the product name, the status, where it's being used and manufactured, some master details, and more. And some of this data is what is going to be fed into Compass to create the life cycle assessment. When I click on the related tab, you'll see that there's also the packaging bill of materials. That is the packaging system for this finished product. So it has the label, the corrugated shipper, a folding carton, and a pallet. And I could drill into any of these individual specifications as well. I'll save the time for now. But inside of each of those specifications is additional details such as materials, weights, and other information. So when I go up here to click the Run LCA button, it's as simple as that one click, and it's automatically recognizing the primary packaging, the secondary packaging, and the tertiary packaging for this particular finished good. I'm going to give this project a name. We'll say it's the webinar demo. And then if I wanted, I could add additional components, and I could change up these units of measure, the quantity, and I could change the unit system as well. Once I have this data, I click Export to Compass, and it's going to take a few seconds to work its magic, but it's going to take all the data from that finished product and its associated bill of materials and send it into Compass. So as you can see, within a few seconds, we're already in Compass, and now you can run your life cycle assessment. Within this packaging bill of materials, it's the same items that were in SpecRite. I could go into the label or the folding carton, and you can see some of the information that was pulled over, such as the material type, the mass, the recycled content, and more. I'm going to pass it over to Prashant to walk us through some of what we're seeing in Compass and what we can do in this system.
Thanks, Adam. So now what you see is the end of life data for recycling, landfill, etc., which is the likelihood of that component undergoing that end of life in the region where it's being sold. So this is an addition that Compass did to the data. Now, in addition, you can also add manufacturing process. So right up there, you can click on that, and for that component and that material, you can add any manufacturing process that you want to consider for the LCA. In addition to that, you can click on transportation. So if you come out of that, and you go to the transportation section, you can have inbound transports for that component from the supplier to the manufacturer, etc. And this additional level of data can just let you refine your LCA by adding more detail. Now, Adam, go ahead and just run an analysis on this bill of material. Okay, now you can see here the 4 indicators that were turned on. So fossil fuel use, greenhouse gas, freshwater eutrophication, and water use. And the impact is shown to you by the life cycle phases. So the red part is the material impact, the gray part, silver gray part is the manufacturing impact, and the transportation is the blue impact. So all this impact is instantly available to you as soon as the data comes over from SpecRite. Now, in addition to this, we're going to do some scenario analysis. So let's say you have this spec for this finished good BOM. Now let's make a copy of this, and let's see what sustainability strategy you can follow. So as an example, you can lightweight the folding box board. So go ahead and change the weight of that. Yep. And now, once the change has been made, you can do a comparison of this new design option compared to the baseline. And you can select in the comparison either a primary package or a secondary package or the entire pallet load. And after you do the comparison, so right here you can select that, the two things, and you can add a quantity if you like, annual sales quantity, which just came over basically from SpecRite, and you can do the comparison. Now, when you do the comparison, what you're going to see is you're going to see each one of these 4 indicators and a bar graph that tells you the percentage reduction or increase compared to the baseline. In addition to that, you will also see a spider chart where all these 4 indicators are shown together to give you an overall picture of what's happening with this new design.
Prashant, that is excellent, and I hope everybody on the webinar is excited about what you just saw. Both the simplicity of SpecRite to Compass, and then the type of analysis that you can do in Compass. So hopefully everybody enjoyed getting a sneak peek of SpecRite and Compass together with that demo. Definitely would love to share more with you in the future. You can reach out to your contacts at SpecRite and TRIAC, as well as reach out to myself or Prashant directly as well. It looks like we have a few questions. So I'm going to pass the first question to Prashant, and that is, what data does an LCA depend on?
So Adam, that's a very good question. And so the LCAs are really only as good as the data that is used for it. And over the last decade or so, what TRIAC has done is we source a lot of the data from something called EcoInvent. And EcoInvent is pretty much the gold standard for lifecycle inventory data. We use that, and of course, we do some more work with it. So for example, we regionalize the data, we make sure it's consistent, and so it becomes comparable to each other. We also source some of the data from outside of EcoInvent, like maybe a manufacturer or research papers, things like that. So all the data that we used is pretty much reliable and consistent. And we have gathered pretty much all the packaging materials, conversion processes, and the end-of-life data for many regions, and we provide it out of the box within Compass.
That makes sense. And so the second question that came in, I'll actually take myself. And the question is, what are the use cases for this integration in other teams and departments besides packaging? So based on what we've seen with our current customer base and in conversations with some of you, is that there's really application to sustainable development and sustainability assessments across the company. So a large one is with the new product development and R&D team. So when you are creating a new product or a new packaging system or bill of materials to go into that product, evaluating the different sustainability impacts and running an LCA, which you can do in Compass to compare two packaging items to each other. So definitely for the MPD team. Another is with the procurement group. Certainly you want to be sourcing the most sustainable materials, and being able to look at the information that comes from Compass and some of the sustainability references that are in SpecRite as well is going to help the procurement group in the sourcing. And definitely it goes beyond that, especially up to the executive level, given the different corporate initiatives that you have around CSR, you're going to be able to use this data for that.
Adam, can I add a couple more to that?
Of course.
I think these days with companies, they also happen to have either sustainability departments, groups, or environmental health and safety people, and those would also benefit from this data.
I love it, and certainly Prashant is an expert in this space, having done it for many years, and so appreciate that addition. The next question that came in, probably Matthew, you can take this one, which is, how can this be used to help manage the ever-changing landscape of sustainability?
Yeah, no, Adam, that's a great question as it's so forward-looking. I think one thing you've not heard today is that either TRIAC or SpecRite is defining what sustainability is. What we're doing is, based upon the definitions given, we're giving the outcomes of how you stand. I think that most companies, most geographies and countries really don't know the definition of sustainability in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And the systems and tools that we use through technology have got to be able to move and alter while keeping the data solid and be able to give the outcomes against the regulations or the expectations of the future. So again, a spec first approach with great best of class tools like Compass on top of that data will help us be agile, move around as the world changes in its definitions. And as we get to know more and there's more process steps in place to be able to get rid of materials or make smarter materials going forward. So again, the only way you can do that is through data and good tools such as our partnership here. So excited for the future for both companies and certainly for the clients that get the chance to avail this technology.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. And I'm going to kick the last question over to you, Prashant, in a second. I know that we have a number of customers that are looking at their carbon footprint closely and essentially trying to determine, once they have these different sustainability metrics, what should they do with them? What's the so what? So the question is, what can the environmental impact calculation be used for?
That's another good question, Adam. And so traditionally, these calculations were really used as a decision-making tool to decide which package is better than the current one. What we are realizing now is beyond just individual decisions like that, reporting against goals. So whether it's a corporate sustainability goals, ESG goals, or any other internal, external goals that the company might have around sustainability, these calculations and the reports that are generated can be used for that as well. So all the way from goals to reporting.
Sounds great. Hopefully that was informative for everybody. Really appreciate everyone spending the time with us, and really appreciate Matthew and Prashant spending the time to educate the group. Please do reach out if you have any questions or want to learn more. We're very excited to utilize SpecRite and Compass together with many of you. Have a great day.